Life gets ill, homie, we got bills. More than one kid, a boss we could kill. Aches and pains all hurt, we take pills. Then it's gotta
just find that place. Everybody, welcome back to PodCats LG. We are again still talking about housing. The housing element, some about the general plan, but some about affordable housing. It's a big topic. We're here talking about housing again. Straight across from me, of course, is Catherine Summers, my partner in crime, and also the executive director of the Chamber of Commerce here in Los Gatos. I, of course, am Brian Bernasconi. I'm a real estate agent here in town and a resident, and I'm also on the board at the Chamber. To my right, we have Susan Burnett. I said Barnett before, and I apologize for that. It's Susan Burnett. Susan Burnett is a member of the Housing Element Advisory Board. Right? Did I get that right? Perfect. And then we've got Michael Kilkenny. And Shan, are you here?
Yes.
I can see. Michael's got one of his headphones on a little wonky.
Yes. Do you mind if I? Hello, PodCats team.
I'm also on the General Planning Committee.
Okay, I'll plug that in. Susan just, we're back now, and so Susan just reminded me that she's also on the General Planning Committee here for the town of Los Gatos. And Michael Kilkenny, you are here being as a citizen of the town,
yes.
as a resident,
yes.
Like Tony Alicon, who was just here, resident at large.
Yes.
Long-time resident, though. How many years have you lived here?
Well, my family's been here since 1913.
1913.
Oh, wow.
So this is real
That
deal.
is for real.
Yeah.
Okay, so do you remember where you were going to go?
Yes.
We're carrying over from the conversation that we just had with Allie and Tony.
Right. And
Okay.
you were commenting on how you've been nervous about this
I've
conversation.
been nervous about this conversation.
I mean, housing, it's a hot button, and it is really hard to come to a table and actually tell how you really feel about it. And I'm still kind of, I don't want, for example, I live up the hill, and I don't want the house next door to mine to be turned into 8, units or whatever. So I sometimes I think even become like a little bit of a NIMBY.
Yeah.
Right. And
yeah,
so
I'm curious, why don't you want those 8 units next door?
Well, and this really isn't supposed to be about me.
Nobody wants to say it, right?
Yeah.
But you do kind of buy a house in Los Gatos, and you think, I want to have my, I don't necessarily know if it's peace and quiet, but it's kind of like you want to know that you bought something that's not really going to change that much. And that's kind of why you put.
So it would be added, maybe noise, added traffic, added taxation, added resource use.
Yep, probably.
Okay.
Yeah, a little bit more parking on the street. So you kind of,
More people
you have your
street.
expectations, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Right.
But coming back to really our conversation here is, I think the reason I was nervous about this is because people are really putting themselves out there. And like even, with Allie, I agree with all that she's saying too, because I do want a multicultural town. And I want to see more economic diversity here. But how do you do it all? Like, is it even possible? Or are we, and so I know, having you here, Susan, I know you were nervous in coming because and I love your passion and how you get fired up at the housing advisory, at the meetings that you attend, and at a member of the GPAC and everything. And so, and you've been here a long time in Los Gatos, and so you feel strongly about keeping it the way that it is and preserving it. So tell us a little bit about why your passion.
Well, I'm also just joined. I'm also now on the Historic Preservation Committee, and so I will be leaving the Housing Element Committee and the General Planning Committee. And I've really enjoyed the Housing Element, and it's a very important issue, and it's so big. It's not just, we look at it in a sort of a little area, Los Gatos, but this is all over California, and I believe all over the country right now. It's a whole wave to have more housing, and I think there's other agendas going on, but I don't want to go into that. And Los Gatos is put in a difficult position because you have to have so many houses based on population, demographics, and the economics. I mean, it's very complicated. Since I've gotten on the Housing Element Board, it's very interesting, and it's complicated, and I think everyone's trying to do the best they can and meet all the needs. And we have now 1,993 housing units that we are supposed to produce in Los Gatos on this 6th cycle, housing cycle. It happens every 8 years. There was a 5th housing cycle, and we didn't even meet that number, and I think that was 692 or something. So now they're demanding more, and of course, the town council wants to add a buffer of 15 to 30%, which will raise that number to, I think, 20 something, whatever.
Yeah, 2,100. Yeah, right around there.
Right. And then, but the town council is, and I have to say that I'm talking personally. I'm not talking about from a committee point of view. Mm-hmm. So it's just my personal opinion. The main issue I find with going for the higher number that we're talking about, 3,700, is that the zonings will change. Mm-hmm. And when you have the zoning of Los Gatos change, even though we don't produce the numbers, developers can come in and say, hey, your 2040 general plan says 3793, I think it is. 3738. We can build we get to do that.
Basically, the developer can come in and say that 3,738 units has already been approved.
Yes.
We're here now to go ahead and build them.
Basically.
Okay.
And she's correct if that land use.
If the general plan specifies that those number of units are
correct,
allotted.
And that is the fear. She's explaining the fear.
So it's not just a scare tactic, is what you're telling me.
So you can just come in by an R1 property and put up.
Right.
An R1 property being residential one home, residential one unit, R1, and then you're saying you can then buy that and divide it and put in either 4 or 8.
If you have a 10,000 square foot lot, you could put in a 1,200 square foot home, an ADU, and then the additional amounts with having four basic homes on that lot. So they could do that because it's written that, hey, the zoning changes.
What you're really doing in that, and I don't think anybody really has talked about this, is you're changing the dynamic of single-family neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And so that really is one of the big questions at hand is, okay, are we really that progressive as Los Gatos or as California or whatever, that we're really going to change the dynamics of how we were set up 100 years ago? I mean,
I think that to some degree, I think the statement of how we were set up 100 years ago is moot because 100 years ago, we didn't know there were going to be 40 million people living in California. Right?
Nor was there zoning.
Right. Land use has changed since 100 years ago. And so my question also is, and I don't know, maybe you know the answer to this, or Michael, you know the answer to this, but is anybody really feasibly? I mean, does it pencil out to buy a 10,000 square foot lot in the Manor is going to run you a couple $1 million?
Right.
Is it really feasible to buy a $2 million piece of dirt and build 5 houses on it? Is there profit in it still? I don't know the answer exactly. I mean, I'm trying to calculate it in my head as we talk, but you say it's got to be.
The problem is the builder's not going to. The property in Los Gatos is so expensive. No one is going to do that. I mean, they talk about all this.
Yeah.
But happening is another thing. I don't see how it's even possible.
But this is where I come to is, okay, you've got 3,738 units that have been approved, but realistically...
Well, haven't been approved by the council.
Not approved, not approved.
But those are what are proposed.
I'm thinking theoretically, if it were to pass. Are people really going to start just coming into Los Gatos or taking their 10,000 square foot lots and just converting them like that? I mean, is it really just going to be this thing that everybody all of a sudden does?
Well, let me ask you a question. What is the price range on Yuki's property on North 40?
Oh, on the new
new units?
Yeah.
I'm afraid I don't know the answer to that.
I think they start at 1.6.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you buy a lot in what's it? We were called when we were kids, Blossom Hill Manor.
Yeah.
And you pay $2 million, and you put 6 units in.
I mean, if each of those units sold for $1.6 million, right? You're into it for what are we at? $6 million?
I have some numbers from Tony. These are the prices for North
or Yuki.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
North.
I've got one here listed. Thank you, Tony. $1,200,000, $1,218,000, $1,371,000, $1,448,000, $1,628,000, $1,708,000, and one at 22828. That's also in the same.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
So we go from $1,200,000 to $2,200,000. I guess, yeah, if you can turn a $2 million lot plus the construction, that's going to cost you another $3 million. You got a $5 million nut to cost of building, and you can sell it for $6 million. I guess there's profit in there. I mean, on the back of a napkin.
Yeah.
Again, is this really? I mean, maybe that's what people want. Is there any? So has there been a study done on this that you know of?
I don't think people want it. It's come from Sacramento, where I used to work, and Washington D.C.
Yeah.
where I worked. It's equity trickling down. Here's what's going to happen, and if you don't do it, here's what's going to happen.
But I think that people do want these smaller, more affordable units. I think that
I'm not challenging that. I'm challenging the fact that government is dictating this.
right.
So you think we should challenge it too as a town? You think we should fight it though? On what grounds?
Well, there could be a number of grounds. Number one, parking. Is there water?
It's the
I mean,
infrastructure.
5, maybe 6 states are out of water. Lake Mead is down 40 feet, 50 feet. I don't know. There isn't any water. But just keep building.
That's a legitimate. I mean, I think that's a legitimate concern that we're running out of water and the people keep coming.
Do you think that there is enough housing for the people that need housing right now, or do you?
No, there's a dearth of it. But
So how
I don't know how it's
how are you thinking then ahead that we're going to be able, like, where will our teachers live, or where will our workforce live, for example?
Well, I think Tony had a good some good input that they need to be here, not driving from 2
Right.
days.
Or from the valley, or from right.
Right. And so there ought to be some local or state, I guess local, financing.
So incentives from the local government,
Right.
to build these units.
Right.
And other towns and cities are doing that. They're kind of finding ways. Our council has not gotten that creative yet, but that's coming hopefully when they start looking at the what the Housing Advisory Element Board is suggesting.
I mean, there was a time when the police and teachers lived here, and the police chief. Do you know where the Purple Onion is? That used to be a bar called Reggie's, and it was a hotel. And where Nick's restaurant was, that's where they lived. And behind there, that was where go-karts were running.
Ah.
But the police chief was always parked right in front of Reggie's bar.
This is going back a ways because I don't remember this, and I've been here a long time.
Wow.
Not-
This 60s.
yeah. I want to get back to where we started just
Yeah.
a second because Susan, you sort of started out by saying you sat here in the studio while we had the conversation and with Allie and Tony, and you sat down next to me and you said, "Well, I have some thoughts, but I don't want to get into that." Would you be willing to tell me what you don't want to get into?
Well, first I want to get into what I wanted to get into.
Okay. And then we'll come back to the things you don't want to get into.
Okay,
Yeah,
we
perfect.
might
Okay.
touch on that. I wanted to mention that, they talk about jobs and housing for people coming in with jobs. And the latest data shows that by 2040, Los Gatos is going to increase by 759 jobs. And that's in the latest information that I have.
Can you repeat that stat by what year?
759 jobs
New jobs created in this town
by 2040.
by 2040.
So we talk about all this housing necessity, and this is what I'm getting back to, housing necessity. And then you talk about, so it's like 0.2 jobs per unit we're talking about here. And then we talk about population. Well, if you listened to quite a few people and statistics. The population of California is going down. So again, we're basing so much of this housing necessity on what real facts, what are we really talking about here? And that's why I always think that it's just another agenda going on of pushing housing. And I don't know if it's what it's really based on. I'm still trying to figure out what are we really trying to deal with. And Los Gatos is supposed to be the town of greenhouse gas protection, or making sure that we follow our targets. And yet now with all this new housing, if we have 3,700 units, how much increase in greenhouse gases are you in? We're trying to get the Sierra Club involved in this, because this is another issue. Then you have policing, the increase in policing, fire, water, transportation. I mean, Los Gatos we're sort of landlocked here. We don't have a lot of transportation. And another point is that, when you build very low and low income housing, it's a cost to our town. And you haven't even touched on the area of finance and what the cost of all this housing is really going to be to the town that's already has big problems.
Is that the cost to the town or a developer?
Cost to the town itself.
You mean to provide services?
To provide services. And also the building cost. If you put a low-income house, very low, it's a cost to the town. They don't make money on the low and very low-income houses. So, I mean...
tax-wise.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Is
the property tax.
Do you know that to be true?
Yeah,
that there's less revenue to the town for these lower income homes?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So I mean that's an important thing. If you think of the finances of town of Los Gatos, we're really hurting right now.
Wait. You say we're really hurting right now. What does that mean?
Well, I think it's about $2.4 million deficit a year we're facing.
$2.4 million deficit a year. I keep looking to you
And
to
I think
verify these facts. She's in the pocket there?
She is.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's government, deficit spending.
Yeah. And so...
this, of course, then brings me back to the...
so this needs to be addressed.
Don't do it.
Go for it.
It's not affordable housing. Yes, we're looking for other revenue streams is what we're looking for at this point.
Right.
But I mean, some would argue that if you have more people that are living in town and more people that are able to live, work, and play right downtown, you might have more people shopping local, for example, and then your sales tax revenue goes up. So there are both sides. I'm fascinated, though, this infrastructure. If you do build all these houses, one, are they really needed? And what does it do to our roads and our parking lots and everything else that we rely on, the water, that is all, and the schools. That is fascinating. I do, though, I did hear an argument recently about the fact that there are so many homeless people, of course, in California, and however to deal with that situation that's growing and growing. And it is about building housing so that some of those people, and again, not all of them want to be housed, but some of them would want to be housed again. So if you level the playing field in all of these towns, then everything really becomes more affordable. I mean, you might not have, your $8 million house anymore. I mean, everything's just going to become a little more equalized.
Well, as Tony said, though, the homeless in Los Gatos are like 30.
Yeah.
And we had on Democracy 10 he wasn't the police chief, but he worked in that's his area, the homeless. And the way he described it is that Los Gatos does a terrific job. And you have very, very few people out of that number that really have gone on to go into a home, or that we've helped them we usually help them get what they want, actually. Whether they want to stay on the street, they get the medical care. I mean, Los Gatos does a really, really good job. And I think this is where I touch on one of the comments about Los Gatos being racist, which causes my blood pressure to go up. I've lived here almost all my life except 2 years. And, raised here, race just has never been something I've thought about, I've been negative about, or had a feeling about. I mean, the demographics, was amazingly a white little town, but we had a lot of Hispanics in our town.
Yeah.
And
Johnny Mesa.
Johnny Mesa. I mean, there's tons.
Remember him?
Yeah.
I was good friends with Johnny, and he was one of the most racist people I knew, quite honestly.
Really?
What?
I don't want to get too far into it, but
Something you don't want to talk about.
excuse me for anybody who knew him, but boy, that guy could throw out some expletives. Yeah. And so I think it's okay. We're going to get into the race thing just a little bit here, but isn't one of the problems with the idea of racism that you can sit here next to me and be Caucasian and say, I don't see any racism, and that's the problem with racism, is that the people who aren't adversely affected by it can say it doesn't exist and sit around and say, what racism? And because you don't feel the effects of it.
Yeah, but the other point is yes, okay, I may not have felt the effects of it, but you know what? When you've brought attention to it, Los Gatos has made efforts. You can't fix something if you don't know it's broken. If I don't know I'm racist and someone says, well, you're racist because you're white, well, okay, well, maybe I should listen to that and then say, okay, well, if that's true, then what can I do to make sure that I show that I'm not racist? Because I don't feel like I'm
Reparations.
racist. So, but I think that's what
I think that this housing conversation is, to some degree,
Yes.
reparations.
I agree. And I think it's fascinating that every single podcast we've had, we somehow do touch on the race issue. And so is it affordable housing? Is that fear? Is that a reality that all of a sudden you have to analyze whether or not you are kind of
Well, that's the FFHA. Is that what it's called?
Conversely, racism is racism.
meaning?
Racism is racism?
Trying to rectify through equity is turning out to be racist.
Michael, I don't know you that well, but I'm not going to allow that argument here. I don't feel like that's I think that is a dog whistle argument, and I think whatever. I guess I can't
not
just
meant to be
stomp
for
my
me.
feet.
Hold on. I was picked up one word that he said a couple times. I wanted him to explain. So when you say equity, and that equity argument is being passed down from the federal government to the state governments, and so we all have to be equitable. When you say that, what does that actually mean to you, and what does that mean, and why are you against that?
I find it difficult to have government coming in and dictating their mores.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah. But here's what I see as being the flaw in that thinking. In the 50s and 60s, there was redlining and blockbusting and
Right.
and people of color,
Rightfully so.
and CC&Rs. It was written into CC&Rs that nobody of color, nobody Chinese, nobody
Correct.
of African descent can own property here. They weren't allowed to be given loans, and so all of the post-World War II wealth that was amassed by the class of people that could get loans has transferred generationally and built greater wealth. Whereas those people got a
Short end of the
they
stick.
got the short end of the
Yeah.
stick. They got a bad start. It's like saying you're going to have a race and not putting gas in their tanks and saying, "Oh, you lost. Too bad, but you didn't put gas in their tank." And so the race is rigged. And so now this idea that racism is racist is racist, being racist is racist, or saying racism is racism, I just don't. I think we're not really acknowledging the fact that there are classes of people who basically got kind of the knees taken out 50, 60, 70 years ago. And now we've fixed those mechanisms, but that didn't address the generational growth of wealth.
Right. So just to maybe give you an example, particularly Asian Americans are thwarted from getting into colleges because they're Asian and someone else is not getting in that's of color, and that's this pendulum going too far.
Again, I think that is its own. I think that to some degree that's its own form of reparations, and this isn't supposed to be a conversation about race, because I mean, there have been advantages awarded to Caucasian people for decades.
Again, so Susan, I'm going to touch on something that you and I have talked about before. Goes kind of in line with this. That you think or you feel that people need to earn their, not necessarily their right, but you can't have affordable housing for all, because maybe it's okay that our kids can't move here tomorrow, and maybe they have to kind of what Tony did. You buy your first house in the backyard of a movie theater, and then you move, you kind of move up the ranks. Now, well, that's
dirty movie theater.
It was a dirty movie. Didn't mention that again. And I kind of look at my kids and I think, okay, should they really be able to move into Los Gatos right now, into an affordable housing unit? And so, tell me a little bit more about that argument that maybe the young people have to work their way up and they have to wait to be able to live here.
Well, I think there's a certain generation right now, I think that they have a little bit of an entitlement issue, and they want to jump in the middle of the line rather than starting from the back of the line. And I see that in certain age groups. And I just sort of feel that that's it may be a generalization, but it seems like it's more prevalent that wanting to move to Los Gatos and be able to live here. I mean, that's a terrific desire. I mean, I'd like to move to Atherton and have a place in Hillsborough. When we first moved to, I've lived in Los Gatos, like I say, most of my life, but then when I married, we worked our way up in homes that we could afford, both working. I'm a nurse. I have my master's degree in nursing, and my husband was in the car business, so we worked our way up and achieved. I know houses now in Los Gatos are way and above the normal ability to purchase, to get into, and I totally understand that, but you can't make, life is not so totally fair. I mean, a lot of people realize that. They then started in Willow Glen and would be buying homes. And maybe that would be a place to start. I don't think you can just all of a sudden, I'm entitled to live in Los Gatos and you have to make a place for me. I mean, what are we supposed to do? Reduce the value of our properties? I mean, when I was growing up, Los Gatos, we used to all run around practically barefoot picking prunes, all the kids in the summer, and Los Gatos was a poor town. It wasn't a wealthy town. I mean,
It's true.
And Saratoga was the wealthy town, and I never even thought I could ever live in Saratoga because it would be way out of my price range. But I don't think that attitude exists now with a lot of young people. I think they somehow feel that we should make room, and I should be able to, and I don't know what the answer is.
Yeah.
It's all very, very complicated.
And do you have kids yourself?
I do. I
You
have.
do?
Mm-hmm.
And do they live in Los Gatos?
They do.
So they were able to get in.
They were able to get in. My
Were
son.
you able to help them get in? Were you able to offer them assistance?
No, my son. My daughter bought my mother's house after
That's assistance.
she moved. Yeah. So that was
Yeah, that's a
that was
generational transfer.
That was in Blossom Hill Manor, and then my son was able to buy his house.
And he did that on his own? You guys didn't help at all?
We didn't help on
No,
that.
that's good. That's
What? Yeah. Okay. Oh, good. This is perfect because I'm a little stuck, and I'm going to take a teeny little break, so we have to decide how we want to proceed. But I think there's still more to talk about. Would you agree with me?
I would.
Okay, but I can't. I've got to take a small break.
Okay.
It's like just a little break to cut this one off. We're going to wrap this. We're trying to keep it in bite-sized pieces so you can absorb it as you listen or watch. So we're just going to take a quick little break, and then we're going to come right back with Susan and Michael, and of course Catherine. Again, this is PodCats LG. Please take a minute to subscribe. And if you are really wanting to participate, there's an area where you can leave comments, especially on YouTube. We would love to hear your comments. We would love to see a dialogue happening here. So please take a moment to subscribe. You can go to our website, PodCatsLG.com, and we'll also probably play a little quick message from the people who are sponsoring the show. So we'll be right back. Hey everybody, I want to say thank you so much for tuning into PodCats. We really appreciate you guys taking the time to listen or watch. I'm down here at the Hardcore Barber in Los Gatos, and just want to take a second to give a shout out to our sponsors and our supporters. First of all, I want to say thank you to KCAT for having us down, for recording the show, for helping us with all the technical stuff. KCAT has been absolutely amazing. Secondly, I want to thank the Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber of Commerce has been a huge supporter. They've also sponsored the show, and so we want to just tell you that they're doing an amazing job. If you're not involved with the Chamber, you should be. Thirdly, I want to say thank you to Brian and Dan Real Estate. Brian and Dan, Silicon Valley Real Estate. Dan has been a huge fan of PodCats, and we're also sponsoring the show. And lastly, then, the brokerage that we work for, which is Christie's International Real Estate Sereno, formerly known as Sereno Group, has been a massive sponsor. Everybody should be using Sereno. Christie's International Sereno, the best brokerage here in Los Gatos, bar none. Thank you again for tuning in. We really appreciate it. And now we're going to get you back to the show. Welcome back to PodCats LG, another part here in the housing conversation. We appreciate you coming back. Thank you. And we're just going to launch back in here with Susan Burnett and Michael Kilkenny and, of course, Catherine Summers. And I think you are ready to roll, right? We're just picking it up from the last conversation.
Well, I just wanted to make sure that we're not scaring our guests. You guys are okay with this as well?
Yeah,
Yes?
you know, speaking of housing, you know, the Yuki property was bifurcated by 17. I don't know if many people realize that. So the balance is about 20 acres on Oka Road. Mm-hmm. And anytime I brought it up with the city, that, you know, it's like, well, we're not talking about that right now.
You mean the second phase?
No, this is a separate piece of property.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, that could be developed.
Yeah, and so
it wasn't included in the North 40.
No.
Okay, it wasn't included in the specific plan. It's still yet to be dealt with in the future.
Yeah, and so nobody really wanted to talk about that. Let's not talk about that.
Well, that's because they have a massive mess on their hands with the existing parcel, and all of these other questions. I think. I mean, you can only swallow so much controversy at once.
Well, it's also my understanding that that property on the other side of the highway has been identified by in former RENA cycles, but I think it can't come. I don't think you can bring it back. I mean, we might have to do a little bit further research on that, but
okay.
I think it was identified as a place where we could build housing, and then it was never built, so now it's kind of off the list. The state
It's
said,
off the list now.
The state says, yeah, well, you haven't built there, so we can't consider it any longer. Kind of, yeah. There's some really
so
funny rules.
Convoluted.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now I actually, a big question, because, okay, so the state's telling us that we have to build some housing for equity purposes, whatever. So let's just say we have to. Where would you put them in Los Gatos?
Well, the town.
I think Tony had a great idea. The core downtown ought to be off limits. You can't turn old town Los Gatos upside down. That's just not even on the table.
Well, the town has become, you know, they're really doing their best on this. And Joel Paulson, he's really, I mean, they work so hard down there in the planning department. The issue is that, I lost my train of thought. What was the?
Well, it was about where would you build it? Because we have to build some, so where?
Well, they came up, the general planning committee was asked to identify areas in Los Gatos, and they came up with 3 tiers of different sections, and each amounting to so many houses, so many units that you could get out of each section. And the Planning Commission forwarded that, I believe, to the town council, and they're looking at tier 1, which includes, you can go online and find, all this information is online, and you can find out what they're talking about. There are several parcels in downtown Los Gatos. There's the...
For instance.
Pardon?
For instance.
Well, Montebello Way, then the couple places on North Santa Cruz Avenue. Then
Montebello Way? Where?
Mm-hmm.
So above the post office.
Yeah, above the post office.
You know, kind of
The post office lease is up, so you're talking about that
yes.
Yes.
Yeah, and some of these people, the problem is, though, I mean, they identify all these properties, and yet the people who own these properties saying, hey, wait a minute, I'm not going to give up my property. So that's what I think Rob Moore is saying, that, well, the idea is great, but I don't know if it's going to really take off or not. But meanwhile, the town council has to decide on which tier, and I think they're thinking about tier 1, which is sort of spread out. And so that's... Is that,
And do you like that it's spread out?
I
almost has to be.
Personally, I don't really want downtown Los Gatos because of, I know I live in a fire hazard area in the Glen Ridge area, and of course Tony living in, I mean, there's areas that you really shouldn't put increased housing. We have enough issues with the fire and getting out and traffic. So I don't think downtown Los Gatos, plus transportation. And, you know, if we're going to have 95 more jobs, so-called jobs, by 2040, and then other people who work here too. But
so actually, drill down on that a sec, because you brought that number up a couple times. By 2040, 750, 790 more jobs.
Right.
Do you not want more people working in Los Gatos?
Oh, no, I do.
Okay.
But I'm just saying they're basing all this housing that we have to provide all the housing for jobs.
I think the point was that there aren't actually that many jobs that are
planned, right? So why do we have 3,700 houses?
Yeah, who are you housing and why?
That was my point.
Because the jobs aren't really actually going to be here, which is ironic right this minute, because everybody we know who runs a business is having trouble hiring anybody.
That's
right?
true.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that may be a function to some degree of nobody who is available to work here because they have to come from so far away to work for $18 an hour. I'm on the board over at the Terraces of Los Gatos, and I know they have a terrible time hiring, and they're paying pretty decent wages. But it's still not enough to live, especially here in Los Gatos, but even anywhere in the county. I mean, the average price of homes in the county, in Santa Clara County, I think is about $1.2 something million. Yeah. This is for a ranch house I'm just talking about Santa Clara County, which includes Morgan Hill and Gilroy, right? Yeah. So it's not just a Los Gatos problem. It's a countywide problem. It's a statewide problem. And again, I don't want to go that far out. Sorry.
But we're providing houses though for people that live outside of our area that have the money to buy in Los Gatos, and they live somewhere else. I mean, they buy in Los Gatos, but they work somewhere else. That's what we're doing. That's what our community is doing.
What does that mean? That's what our community is doing? You mean that's what Los Gatos is doing? Is
Well, if you look at the graphs that are coming out, it shows that we're actually there's a. Phil
Kuhn.
Yeah. Phil, he's very
Community
very
Alliance.
Good. Yeah, basically we're providing housing for people who don't live here.
Yeah.
Excuse me, Michael, just one second. I want to say we had a little technical glitch. We're back now, so everything's rolling and we're back. So we're going to have this weird cut in the middle of everything. It's going to.
But I think we have only a little. It's going to cut to bit of time,
and we got to wrap, and we got to get close to wrapping up.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
But that's an example of losing housing.
But I'd like to, if I may.
Yes.
And
to your point,
I still want to get down to, I'm still perplexed as to how we can keep having this conversation for so long. And I'm so fascinated by your question or your concern. You said there are things I would like to say, but I'm not going to get into those. And I want to dig into the problem, like really, like where are we stalled, right? Am I going?
I love this.
So you had said you would share something with me about the things that you didn't want to say. And this is what I want PodCats LG to be. I want it to be a forum where we can actually say a few things that need to be said that nobody wants to say. Is it possible to ask you to be that champion of truth for a moment?
Well, I think one of the issues was what Tony brought up about the general plan and the description of Los Gatos as being racist. That was my main concern.
That the general plan it casts a light on that suggests we're racist, or just flat out says we're racist.
Tony read the excerpt, but it describes Los Gatos as having a history of racism. That's what it basically said. And
I see.
For me, living in Los Gatos all my life, I'm saying, where's this history of race? And again, you brought up that you may not know you're racist, even though you are racist, but now I see Los Gatos has made and brought to our attention. We're trying the best we can, so I don't see why we should be described that way.
So you don't want to acknowledge We don't want to acknowledge a history of racism.
No, I don't.
And I'm sorry to say we got a technical issue, so I got to cut this segment short. I'm
Okay.
being told that we're just done for the day.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just getting the wave over there and saying that we're done for the day. So this is it. Susan, honestly, thank you so much.
Yes.
I think that this conversation is important. Michael, I really appreciate you coming down. Thank you for that. I appreciate both of your perspectives, and I think they're important voices in the conversation. Catherine, you're amazing. You're doing an amazing job at the Chamber of Commerce. I think everybody in town should agree with that. You're doing an amazing job. And so thank you for your service. And you please leave comments below or smash that subscribe button now.
And vote for Tony.
Come together right now. Hit the ground running, ain't even a discussion. Hold up. Come together right now. Ain't no time for sleep. All we gotta do is come together.